welcome to Tool Talk. My name is Catherine Rosbach, and today we're going to be talking about the tool called Brainwriting. Okay, so for those of you who have your ultimate facilitation toolkit already, we are going to be looking at the tool, as I noted, called Brainwriting. And I thought it would be a good place to start with that tool, not just because it happens to be near the beginning of the book and begins with the letter B, but because this tool, even though it's so simple, is so powerful at helping to mitigate a number of the influences and biases that can hamper team engagement, that can absolutely compromise the diversity that you're seeking, the diversity of thought within your groups. And for those involved with any type of decision-making or risk mitigation or cost estimation, this is a tool that you need to have in your hip pocket. For those who don't have a copy of this book, by the way, and would like one, you can buy it on Amazon. There is a Kindle version as well as a hard copy version. So before I dive in and actually talk about the tool itself, let me talk a little bit about what is happening when groups come together. So as noted in this, you can see there are a number of influences and differences that can hamper the effectiveness of a team. I think most people are aware of the term called groupthink. The formal name is called the conformity bias. Personality styles, extroversion and introversion, right? We all think by writing on a list of ground rules that everybody should speak their mind, that means everyone's going to talk. That's not going to happen. Another thing that can really affect the effectiveness of a team is group size. You go over that working size of 8 to 10, and it really starts to compromise how many people participate and the type of thinking that you get. And it gets worse when we're in hybrid. Today, I want to focus on this thing called the anchoring bias. Now, there's a number of cognitive and motivational biases that are present when groups come together, but I wanted to talk about this one because, again, it can be so detrimental for those that are seeking, again, diversity of thought or working in estimations, cost estimations, likelihood of risks. And you're bringing a group together from diverse backgrounds, hoping you're going to get different perspectives. And what happens if you don't use a tool like Brainwriting? We get bitten by the anchoring bias. So I'm assuming most of you are familiar with this, or some of you are. If you're not, it's people's tendency to rely too heavily on initial information. What does that mean when we say initial information? It means if we're all asked a question and we think, gee, what do we think this is going to cost? And someone speaks first, or you read a number first, that your response will be impacted by this. We literally give too much weight to what we see first or what we hear first, and that changes our response. Now, I can only imagine some of you are thinking, no, that would never happen to me. And I would advise, there's some really good books out on this topic that they often have little quizzes at the start. So that will bring you face to face with how much you are influenced. But there's another set of circumstances, I think, that can also show how we are impacted by this thing called anchoring bias. And that's when we go shopping. Marketers love the anchoring bias. People who want to get you to buy something love the anchoring bias. I always laugh when you walk into a store like a Walmart or a Target. Before you even go down the aisle, there's a big sign with a price of something. That's anchoring. You already have that price in your mind. Or if they've talked about a discount, something is already in your mind. That is going to influence if you buy something, and most importantly, you buy something you don't need. Another example of the anchoring bias in the shopping world is when you see something like this. Hey, this microwave, it costs $300, but guess what? We've taken off. I'm not going to sell it at that price, and we're going to sell it to you now for $190. I always laugh when I look at things like this because isn't it interesting how they make sure that X is thin enough that you could still absolutely read the number below? And I've often heard people comment, well, why did they even tell you what the original price was? Why don't they just give you the sale price? Because you likely wouldn't buy it. You wouldn't be anchored on the fact that it was $300 and, oh my gosh, I am now going to save $110 on this item. This is anchoring. This is anchoring. So how does this work its way into the workplace? Well, in a number of different ways. But one of the ways that is quite prominent is let's say we brought a group together and we bring in an external expert on something, or perhaps we bring in someone from another division who knows this very well. And we ask the likelihood of something happening, or what's it going to cost, or the myriad of questions that we ask people in the workplace. That expert speaks first, and then we turn to the other people sitting around the table. Guess what? They're very likely to be biased, not only because they've been anchored, but another problem is, as shown as this diagram, one of the other powerful forces is that of authority figures. And people hear someone else saying, oh, this is the number. And often what they think is, oh my gosh, mine must be wrong then, because I was thinking it was quite different. And then they change their number. And again, at that moment, you've lost the diversity of thought. Everyone's starting to think the same way. And we likely have a much smaller range of outcomes than, or possible outcomes than we would have had we not tried to mitigate this bias. All right. So with that as a quick background, how do we use this thing called brainwriting? It's pretty easy. As you can see here in the construction steps, this is lifted straight from the book for those of you who have it. You're going to start out with whatever your topic is or question. And again, it could be, what are all the ways we can reduce costs, right? So we're coming up with those ideas. Or it can be, what do we think is going to be the cost, next year, whatever the question is. The key thing is that at this point, everybody has a piece of paper, everybody. And if you're in a hybrid meeting, I ask somebody, everyone who's coming in on Teams to grab a Post-it or something, and also something they can write with. It's critical that they write it down, not type it. And again, this format isn't the time to go into some of the details in terms of the differences in our brain between writing something down and typing it. Suffice to say, there is a difference. So that's one of the reasons why I will have like pieces of paper, pads of small paper, and also always pens, because we don't seem to carry pens around these days. So I ask people to write it down. And then in a round robin fashion, as it says here, I ask each person to read off what they have written. And I want to repeat that. Read off what they've written. Don't give me something new in your head. Read off what you've written. Okay. Why is that important? Let me show you. When it comes to brainwriting, as I said, one of the things that is so wonderful about this is that it gives us time to think. Normally, we're walking into meetings, there's a question thrown at us, and we've got to come up with an answer right away. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be your extrovert raising their hand and saying, well, this is what I think. And so already we're starting to anchor everyone's thought around what someone else said. So one of the things is brainwriting gives us time to think. The second thing that it does is leverage this thing called cognitive dissonance. I love this. Cognitive dissonance is basically going back in a nutshell and saying that we are less likely to change our minds if we have written it down or if we had stated it in front of a group. So if I say to my friend, oh, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, I am more likely to stick with that resolve given the fact that I've said it to someone else. And you all might be bringing to mind now some of the programs and things that use that so that people will continue to follow something that's good for them. So again, that's cognitive dissonance. By writing it down, you're less likely to change your mind. So I want people to absolutely write things down when there's an expert in the room or if there's a leader in the room. Why? Because often those people speak first and then others think, uh-oh, I had the wrong idea. I was going down the wrong path. And at that moment when they shift, we've lost the diversity of the group. The third piece, as I've been alluding to, is the anchoring bias. We haven't heard anything. No one has spoken up. Everybody gets to give their answers or set of answers, whatever it might be, without having been influenced by others, simply by writing it down. And again, why I do emphasize the having them write it down and then read off what they have written is even having written it down, the number of times I have heard, I've been using this tool probably for 30 years, the number of times I've heard people say, oh no, I probably was thinking down the wrong path. And I'll say, what did you write? What did you write? Read that off. I want to make sure I capture that. Okay. So that is the use of brainwriting, and it is a wonderful tool at mitigating many of these group dynamics. Again, I've been talking about the anchoring bias, but I like to suggest it also deals with the group think, motivational bias, as I alluded to, authority biases, even cultural norms can be a huge thing, which can have people change their minds. So that's Brainwriting. And again, if you don't have a copy of the book, you can find it on Amazon.com. If you want to find out more about my workshops or you have a question about this tool, please feel free to reach out to me at KatherineRossbach.com. Thanks so much for your attention. Have a great day.